friends. Orchid seeds are very, very small, almost microscopic, and they're produced by the hundreds of thousands inside each fruit. In order to pack that many seeds inside of a reasonably sized fruit, they must contain just the bare minimum. Some very few cells that make up the embryo with the genetic information, and a thin protective shell, which allows the exchange of substances with the medium. There is no space for a large energy reserve, like we can find in a bean or a grain of corn, for instance. If one were to compare, an orchid fruit carries way more seeds inside than does a 55-pound bag of corn kernels. The reproductive strategy is success by large numbers. Each one seed has a very small chance. But with so many seeds available, at least a few of them will certainly find the appropriate conditions. In the wild, these appropriate conditions mean a good medium and the right amount of light and moisture. But also fundamental is the presence of a fungus capable of associating with the seed in order to provide it with nutrients it doesn't carry and can't grow without. In the natural habitat, no fungus, no germination or growth. But we will use a different strategy. We will ourselves provide the seeds with the nutrients they need through the use of a super rich medium. It is the in vitro asymbiotic process. The asymbiotic process is no novelty. It was devised in the early 1920s by Louis Knudson, a researcher in the University of Cornell. His growing medium, KC, or Knudson C, created a couple of decades later in 1946, is still in use today with some very minor changes. It relies on the principle that, in the presence of sugars and some minerals, an orchid seed will germinate, even without the help from fungi. But we are just amateurs. We're doing the process at home. Take a peek at the formula for the KC medium. These are not easy substances to find out there in the market in pure form, not unless you work for a compounding pharmacy. So, how can we find a way around it? Well, we can buy some pre-mixed formulation, and there are some good brands for sale, but that's not fun at all. So let's see what nature itself has to offer. Where can we find energy reserves and minerals that can be used by our plants? If you said fruits, tubers, roots, and grains, you got it right. These are the parts most plants use to store their energy savings, and it is from these parts that we will get nutrition for our seeds. There are several possible recipes using different vegetables, fruits, and seeds. It will mostly depend on availability. Professor Mauro Silva has a very well-known and often used formula that he makes available in his channel. I put up a link in the description down here. I have been successful using my variation of the recipe that I'm about to show you. Well, enough talking. Let's make half a liter of culture medium so you can see how it's done. Let's begin by gathering some glass jars with good lids. Get them in boiling water for some minutes to make it easy to clean and remove the old labels. The basic composition of the medium is pretty much like vegan baby food. I try to use some 6 different sources of nutrients, about 30 grams each. You can use some different ingredients like watermelon or fresh corn, so long as in the end you have some 200 milliliters of the mixture. I started with 30 grams of cucumber, now 30 grams of carrots. Then 30 grams of sweet potato. Rumors say it can increase root growth. These first 3 are what I call the optional ingredients. The next ingredients I call fundamental. A ripe banana is an important source of potassium and sugars. 30 grams, and you can use the peel too. Tomatoes are famous for keeping pH levels right and also for providing minerals and antioxidants. Finally, 30 grams of regular potatoes. What vegan baby food is complete without potatoes? And now, the mandatory, most important ingredient of all, 30 grams of crystal cane sugar. Now let's blend it all long and thoroughly. You should also add some 30 milliliters of filtered water or coconut water so that we get the right texture. Let it blend for at least 3 minutes so that every single nutrient gets well mixed into the medium. I'm going to use half of it, 100 milliliters of this mixture, to make half a liter of medium. It is enough because I'm going to seed only 7 jars. Now add clean water up to the 400 milliliter mark. We will use this last 100 milliliters to dissolve the agar. Agar is an algae-based gelatin that will give the consistency to our sowing medium. I use Contain. It usually comes in 4-gram sachets, just right for half a liter, so you don't have to weigh it. It is a product used in Japanese cuisine, so you can easily find it wherever you find Japanese food ingredients. It doesn't dissolve well in cold water, so you should stir it really well. You can help it by heating in the microwave or on a stovetop, but I prefer to use heat only when it's time to disinfect. And yeah, you see how much was left over in the glass? That shouldn't happen. You have to be very careful and mix it all back in. We must now check what the pH level is. I bought these test strips online. The ideal pH level for most orchid seeds is somewhere around 5.8. But 6 is fine too, because after disinfection it might drop a few tenths. With these ingredients I use and the water I have here, I haven't had to correct pH so far. Time to pour it into our jars. 1 inch per jar is more than enough. Oops, this one's too full. Line the bottom of a pressure pan with steel wool. It's time to disinfect the jars. The wool will dissipate the heat into the water and will prevent the jars from breaking. You can place the tallest jars leaning onto the others, but make sure the contents don't touch the lid. Leave some space because it will be hard to close the lid of the pan later on. Now fill it with half a liter of clean water. And good luck closing the pan. Now that's right. It has to be very well closed or the pressure won't kick in. Turn the fire on and wait for the pan to heat up. When the valve begins to hiss, we start a 25-minute count. Having more than one pressure pan makes your life much easier though. Turn the fire off now and don't open your pan until it's naturally back to room temperature. Don't force it. It might take a few hours. Large commercial nurseries use an equipment called autoclave, which is nothing but a very large pressure pan that can hold many jars. Now that they're back at room temperature, let's open the pan. Let's try to. If they were not easy to close, why would they be easy to open up, right? The first thing to do is tighten up the lids and make sure they are really well closed. From this point on, we have to get neurotic with the cleanness and sterilization of the jars. It is important to seal the lids. Cut about 2 inches from a roll of PVC film, then wrap it tightly around the top of the jar. Those jars that were leaning inside the pan have the gel hardened at an angle. But that's okay, it will actually increase the surface area. The jars are now ready to be seeded anytime you wish. If we prepare a large number of them, it might be a good idea to wait for a few days so you can discard the ones that show signs of contamination even before you seed them. But you must keep them crazy clean, even on the outside, or they will carry contaminants with them inside the glove box when you sow your seeds. Sprinkle some chlorine solution inside a food-grade plastic bag. Place a couple of jars inside and then sprinkle again. And here we are. We keep them in a closed, dark place until we use them in our next episode. Episode 6 is about sowing your seeds in the jars, so don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell.